Welcome to episode 2 of my answer questions from the comments format. I had a lot of fun making the first episode, so here's another one. Today's question is from Luke Skywalker II. What is the most powerful weapon in Tolkien's works? Questions about power are always difficult to answer, especially in Tolkien's lore. Power can mean something very different depending on the situation, concept and interpretation. In single combat, other factors make someone powerful than, for example, on a political, military or economic level. However, the question asks for weapons, so what can we count as weapon? For example, the One Ring can be seen as a weapon, but also the File of Galadriel. The addition of the question goes into the direction of spears and swords, so I will focus on classic weapons only. Now the next question, do we include Valar weapons or not? Luke suggests Grond, the hammer of the underworld, which is the mace of the first Dark Lord and Sauron's master Morgoth, also known as Melkor. So I'll take this as a yes. He is right that Grond is a pretty good contender, however, there are some arguments against it. It seems the Valar Morgoth rarely used it, or at least we don't know much about it, and the one time when he actually fought with it against Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor Elves and Galadriel's uncle in single combat during the First Age, the Valar always missed with his mace, even though it had impact when it hit the ground. Quote from the Silmarillion: "Then Morgoth hurled aloft Grond, the hammer of the underworld, and swung it down like a bolt of thunder, but Fingolfin sprang aside, and Grond rent a mighty pit in the earth, when smoke and fire darted." In the end, he crushed Fingolfin with his shield, not his mace, and broke his neck with his foot. It's not stated that Grond ever actually hit him, so when it mattered, it dealt more damage to the surrounding than to its actual target. Fingolfin, on the other side, wounded Morgoth 7 times and struck him in the foot shortly before his death, so that the Dark Lord would limp from now on. Even though he killed the High King, it was a loss for him too, so Grond was very powerful but had its drawbacks. In this context, if you would ask me what weapon was the most powerful weapon excluding Valar weapons, I would say it's Fingolfin's sword Ringil that he used in this fight. It's the only known weapon that wounded a Valar, the most powerful beings besides God, and under the Valar Morgoth was the mightiest. Ringil's name is sometimes translated with Cold Star, and I guess it makes sense. However, it's only certain that its name includes the Quenya word for cold, and it's described that it glittered like ice. In case you are interested in the circumstances of this battle, check my History of the Elves lore video. But what other Valar weapon options do we have? We have the bow and spear of the Valar Orome, the huntsman of the Valar. He hunted down the creatures of Morgoth, who was called Melkor back in the day, around his first fortress Utumno. You probably have heard its other name, Udun, because Gandalf called the Balrog in Moria Flame of Udun, and Balrogs were servants of Morgoth. We can read in the Silmarillion: "And Orome, tamer of beasts, would ride too, at whiles in the darkness of the unlit forests. As a mighty hunter he came, with spear and bow, pursuing to the death the monsters and fell creatures of the kingdom of Melkor, and his white horse Nahar shone like silver in the shadows." The names of his weapons are not known, but it can be assumed that they were very powerful. Another one I find interesting, the Valar Tulkas, champion of the Valar, had his bare hands. He wrestled down Morgoth and chained him with a chain Angainor that Aule, the Valar of smithing, had forged for this purpose at the end of the war for sake of the elves. Being able to wrestle down Morgoth with your bare hands at the peak of the evil Valar's power is definitely a deed to be remembered. However, all the mentioned weapons are hard to rank, but are without a doubt insanely powerful. I would argue for Orome, because he hunted his enemies, probably alone, in the realm of his enemy Morgoth with success. No clue if Tulkas' hands would count. It said he was so powerful that he needed no weapon to fight, and fighting was his expertise. If they count, I would choose them, because he chained Morgoth with them. Another but often forgotten little detail, the weapon of Elrond's father Eärendil, whatever it was. We can read that he slew Ancalagon the Black, the greatest of all dragons. His fire even drove back the Valar and their host, so whatever Eärendil used to kill the dragon, it must be for sure powerful. Of course, a weapon is not explicitly mentioned, and he had a Silmaril and was on a flying ship, but he still somehow slew this giant dragon. Just think about the sentence for a moment in the context that Thangorodrim are 3 volcanic mountains and part of Morgoth's mighty second fortress Angband. Quote from the Silmarillion: "Before the rising of the sun, Eärendil slew Ancalagon the Black, the mightiest of the dragon host, and cast him from the sky, and he fell upon the towers of Thangorodrim, and they were broken in his ruin." Another interesting choice is the black axe of the Balrog Gothmog. He was captain of all Balrogs, and he did some work with his axe and whip. He and his Balrogs drove away Ungoliant, Shelob's mother, who was an insanely powerful entity. He, you could say, killed Fëanor, the most powerful elf who has ever lived. He killed Fingolfin's son Fingon, High King of the Noldor elves after his father's death, and he killed Ecthelion, probably one of the most powerful elf warriors, who killed him too in the process. Just looking at those who he had slain and fought speaks for his weapon. Because I find the topic interesting, I would like to mention some other not Valar and Maiar weapons that I consider very powerful. Besides the mentioned Ringil, Gurthang must be mentioned too. I explained the story in my Dragon's Lore video in the Glaurung section in more detail. Gurthang was the black sword of Túrin, who slew Glaurung, the father of dragons, with it. It means Iron of Death and was forged out of the sword Anglachel. Túrin slew Anglachel's owner Beleg by accident. What must be understood, a powerful but terrible fate or doom lay upon this sword and was inherited when it was reforged into Gurthang. Both were powerful swords indeed, but also problematic because they will tragically doom its bearer at one point. Beleg and Túrin both died in very tragic ways. Also Eol, the Dark Elf, the smith of Anglachel, died tragically too. Another sword I would rank very high is Glamdring, the sword that Gandalf finds in the Troll Hoard. It's most likely the sword of Turgon, High King of the Noldor elves. He became king after Fingolfin's son was slain by Gothmog. Turgon was the founder of Gondolin, which was sacked by Morgoth using his powerful Balrogs, so it was most likely fit for the task to fight those, and Gandalf also manages to slay Durin's Bane. I would say in Middle-earth there is no more fitting sword for this task in the Third Age. I also want to mention Aeglos, the spear of Gil-galad, High King of the Noldor. You guessed right, he became king after Turgon's death. We can see it in Shadow of War and the prologue of Peter Jackson's first Lord of the Rings movie. In this context, the power of Narsil and later Anduril can't be overlooked. So much fate is tied to them, and they became, to some degree, Sauron's doom. We can read: "For the spear of Gil-galad and the sword of Elendil, Aeglos and Narsil, none could withstand." All this is maybe a bit unsatisfying, but it's tough to find a definitive answer. For Valar and Maiar weapons, I would go with Tulka's hands or Orome's spear and bow. For other supernatural weapons, Eärendil's weapon, whatever it was. For normal weapons, Fingolfin's sword Ringil it is. I think a powerful weapon must be able to fight and defeat a powerful foe and strike fear into the hearts of enemies. Ringil definitely succeeded in both, because Morgoth would remember the pain caused by it. Sadly, it's not known what happened to the sword after the duel. Maybe the great eagle Thorondor saved it along with Fingolfin's corpse from Morgoth. Who knows? I hope this answers the question and gives a good overview, but feel free to disagree. Thank you for watching. I could imagine making another one of these answer questions from the comments videos before I'm done with the next Films and Books Lore episode. I still want to make another gaming related video, but no clue when. After that, I either continue with the Films and Books Lore series or make another classic lore video. So many more Tolkien related videos are on the horizon. As always, if you liked this episode, feel free to press the like button and leave a comment, for example with a Tolkien lore question for future episodes. If you want to know more about certain topics, check my longer in-depth videos on my channel. Also, for those who don't know, if you have subscribed to my channel and didn't activate the bell icon, you most likely won't be notified when I upload a video. One of the most confusing design decisions on YouTube, especially for channels that don't upload every day like mine. So in case you wonder why you don't get notified, that's why. Of course, it can still happen that YouTube does not notify you even when the bell is activated. Sometimes YouTube is a strange place and very counterintuitive. Again, thank you for watching and goodbye.